Hey, it's Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is supposed to be for education about asexuality, all things asexual, and I share my asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. Subscribe and hit the bell icon right now. So tonight I've got a movie review for you. This is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Yes, this is a movie I've watched in the last 24 hours. As always with my movie reviews, if you don't want spoilers, please do not watch this live stream. Watch it on replay after you've watched the movie so you can tell me what you think of the movie. So, Indiana Jones, he's back. And yes, Harrison Ford is still playing him. So, first of all, if you didn't know who I am Sandra Bellamy, author of this awesome Asexual Perspectives book out on Amazon. So, I was so happy to see Indiana Jones. Like, I haven't really paid so much attention to the older movies in great detail. I don't even think I've necessarily watched the whole movies all the way through, but the more modern versions, if you like, I have seen at least some of them. But this one was great because it had pretty much everything you would expect from an Indiana Jones movie, plus more, I thought. And overall, I really loved the movie. So it's basically set in years before. So it's set like in the olden times, the Hitler days, with Indiana Jones. And he is a young Indiana Jones then. So they've basically put Harrison Ford, they put an old head on him. It looks really good the way they've done it. So they've made him really, really young. But it must have been like CGI because they show him later as older version of him, how he actually is now. But the younger version is in the first part of the movie. And what happens is they're trying to get this type of spear from the people that follow Hitler, basically, and they're trying to get it, but it's an artifact, and then they realize it's fake, and there's this whole thing where Indiana Jones is captured because he's meant to be like a spy trying to get a hold of this object, and he's captured, and he ends up on a train with people that follow Hitler, so they're against him, and he ends up being tied up, but gets free, and he comes across this treasure on this train, but the actual thing he was originally looking for, or he seemed to be looking for in the movie, which was like this long sword thing with or spear with markings on it, was actually a fake. And then it's really weird because it switches into the fact it's actually a different artifact that's more important with Achilles. And so he needs to find this dial. So years ago, when he was this younger version, he had part of this dial. Now, this dial needs another half to go with it. And when it has the other half to go with it, it can take people back in time. So when he's on this train, he basically robs this part of the dial, half the dial, with his friend. And he takes it off the train and gets to freedom. So in the beginning, it's really good. There's tons of action. There's loads of fight scenes on the train. There's the train going at really high speed, them having to dodge the tunnels to not get smacked in the head. And there's so much action. I really, really loved the action so much in this movie. It was a typical Indiana Jones movie, but I actually thought, although it's set in like an olden day, it was actually very modern with all the action. And I really loved it. I was on the edge of my seat quite a bit throughout the movie with the action. I was like, wow, this is just incredible. And I really loved it. And I loved this movie because it had pretty much the majority of the elements you would expect from an Indiana Jones movie. I thought because he's old now, like, how can they make it as good as the previous movies? Is it just going to be one of those flop movies where it's, oh, we've brought him back because we felt we had to get ratings and money, but it's really no good? And actually, I was so pleasantly surprised it was the opposite. Harrison Ford did a tremendously good job in playing Indiana Jones again. A tremendously good job, both of the as the younger version of him and as the older version. The younger version really did look a lot younger. I just noticed that he looked a little bit older on his chest hair, but that was about it. But the rest of the time, he looked really much younger. The facial expressions and everything were really good. And so anyway, he gets away to safety and gets off the train. I think they cross a border or something because it looks like they've hit land and they're good. And they've stolen this half dial. And the guy who's his friend is an archaeologist. And he studied this dial for a number of years, you find out. And anyway, later on, Harrison Ford decides to retire as Indiana Jones. He's playing Indiana Jones. So Indiana Jones, I should say, decides to retire as a lecturer. But in his lecture that he's doing, he has this woman turn up. And you find out later that this woman was basically his goddaughter. And so this woman's called Helena. And he's got a nickname for her, but it's his goddaughter. And she is a daughter of the friend he escaped with the half dial. Now, what happens is his daughter is a changed being in many ways, and she literally is after money. So she comes across Indiana Jones by sitting in his lecture. Then she meets him afterwards in a bar, and he says he's going to retire, and he lets his guard down. She remembers, says, "Oh, well," she says, "Oh, you don't remember me, do you? I remember you." And then he's like, "Oh, sure I do." And so they get into a discussion, and that's when she talks to him about the dial, saying, "Oh, her dad always spoke about this dial, and she's got his journals, and she believes they can find the other half to put it together." And he's like, "Oh, no, you can't do that because basically it's messing with things." And there's some discussion going on between them, but meanwhile, there's these bad guys. So one of the guys that was in Indiana Jones' past that supported Hitler at that time, and he was also a physics professor, I think. He came back as the older version of him, like, the modern day version. And then Indiana Jones was the modern day version. And this woman called Helena was his goddaughter, which he hasn't seen for years. And his friend was her father, and he's dead now. But the daughter, he obviously trusts quite a lot because it's his best friend's daughter. And when he's talking to her, she actually steals the dial off him. The dial that can change history because it can go back in time. She steals it off him, and there's these baddies that come after her and him. And one of these guys is from the past on the train, which was he's a physics specialist, and he tried to get this dial from him when he was on the train along with other Hitler followers, basically, because it's like being a god. If they get hold of this dial, they get the other piece to it. The amount of power they have not just destroys the world, it because they can change time, it can actually make them like a god, they think. So the whole movie from then on is set on finding this, not just the first piece of the dial, but the second piece of the dial to go with it. Because the first piece of the dial Indiana Jones had. Now, Indiana Jones loses the dial because his goddaughter, who he thought was sweet and innocent, she turns out to be very different as an adult. She's very adventurous, very kick-ass, and she's using the dial, basically, or the half a dial, to sell. And so she goes to this place and tries to sell it to the highest bidder to make money, and that's what she cares about. And so it's really interesting how they've got this woman to play Helena. She's a kick-ass actress. I was so happy with the way they portrayed her as a really kick-butt actress. I love it when they have strong women characters that give as good as they get towards men. I hate it when they make the woman so weak, like a damsel in distress, like she can't do F all for herself. This woman didn't give a shit, basically, and she was in it for the money, and she wanted a sense of adventure, and so she stole it off Indiana Jones, the doll, and then tries to sell it, but Indiana Jones managed to come and find her where she's doing that to, but so do the bad guys, the guy who's like the physician and the other baddies with him. And so they try to get the doll off these guys who are bidding on it. They try and get it off Helena, and then what happens in Indiana Jones gets it, and then they kind of like end up losing it again. And so it ends up with Indiana Jones, his goddaughter Helena, and a young guy called Teddy, who you find out later Helena's befriended, and it's like a kid, like either a child to her or like a kid brother, and they go on these wonderful adventures together. So there's a lot of car chases in it, but they're not traditional cars. They're more like, some of them are cars, proper cars, but other ones are like um foreign country cars, where they're like more like little buggies, where they've got just like a frame on them and small wheels, and there's three of them trying to fit in there, and they're going down all these alleyways, down the steps, flying from one lot of steps to another, and basically it's car chases, and it's really, really good. I was so happy with it. I just like, wow, this is great. There's loads of car chases, there's loads of fight scenes. You find out that Helena's meant to have been engaged to one of these mob people, so they're after Helena. Indiana Jones wants the dial, that half the dial. Helena's trying to go after it with Teddy, and Helena want to sell it for themselves to make money. Helena and Teddy, like they're a team. And so it's just like crazy, the amount of car chases going on, the amount of going after the doll, the amount of kick-ass stuff. Helena gets out of the car, the mini like car at one point. She's trying to get across to the other car with the bad guy and strangle him, the physician, and she's trying to strangle him to get the doll. Meanwhile, Indiana Jones is trying to get the dial off the guy at the same time, and they're battling for the dial throughout the majority of the film towards the end. And this goes on, so they have to go to, they still need to get the other half. This is the first half of the dial they've got, because this is the original piece of the dial from the train which they stole, which Indiana Jones stole in the past with the friend whose goddaughter is now with him, with a boy called Teddy. So, but the goddaughter is changed. The goddaughter is not the goody two shoes that Indiana Jones thought she was, the pleasant girl. She's a kick-ass woman who is into living for herself, getting money, surviving, thriving, and doing her own adventurous thing and crazy thing, but in kind of a dangerous way and a less ethical way, if you like. She's more in it for the money, or so she comes across as that. And so this is a very big contrast to what you think she's going to be like. And so I thought the part of the movie was great where they showed her true character off. They showed you she's not afraid to kick ass. She's not afraid to go from one car to another. She's not afraid to jump across buildings. So she's basically like a younger female version of Indiana Jones. And so I really like that. I mean, I don't know if they'll ever make any more films, but potentially they could bring her in as like a Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? Like a younger version, but a female one, and taking after her godfather. So it was really good. It was very kick-ass. I really loved her character. She was amazing. I love the fact that when they tried to get the rest of the dial, so there's a lot that goes on in this movie. It went on for, I think, about 3 hours. As we were at the 4 o'clock performance, we didn't get out till nearly 7:30. So you're talking a 3-hour film pretty much. It's very long. And it was good. It was long, but it was a very good, well thought out movie, because it had all the elements you'd expect from a high quality Indiana Jones movie. It didn't compromise on quality, because basically Indy's getting old now in the present day. Harrison Ford's like an older guy now. It didn't compromise on quality because of that. It still had like the majority of the elements in it, but it had jokes about him being older and like, you know, hurting his vertebrae now and stuff like that. So that was quite funny. So they did make it very realistic in that way. And I think it's great they had the energy of Helena in there, you know, kicking ass and keeping him going and keeping him on his toes the whole time. I thought that was brilliant. Very, very well thought out by the filmmakers. I really admired that. You know, there was no sex in this movie. So it's sex free, which I like as an asexual who's sex repulsed. You know, and I really love it when I don't see sex in a movie. When I see action film, which is definitely is in kicking ass, I love it. Really do. And so they had to find this other half of the dial. And so what happens is they go on this they end up on this boat in the middle of the sea, and they have to do a deep sea dive because they think the other half of the dial or something to locate the dial is down below. So when they go deep diving down below, the baddies then come on the ship and kill Indiana Jones's friends while they are still diving down amongst eels. So they've got eels that are trying to bite him and things like that. So they've got that tension going. It's always full of tension, Indiana Jones, tense moments where you don't know if they're going to survive or not, or if they're going to get really badly hurt, what's going to happen next. But his friend does get killed. His friend was played by Antonio Banderas, actually. So that was quite interesting. And so they basically dive down, get this, but it's not the other half of the dial, it's an artifact that's got a code on it. So it's actually, I got a bit confused because I thought they were going for the other half of the dial down there, but they were actually looking for this thing. They did mention about the fact they needed a code, I think. So they got this artifact out of this chest in the sea and it's got a code on it. And the baddies were making Helena read it because it's in a certain language. And unbeknownst to them, she had some dynamite that she'd taken out the drawer, which was on the ship, the boat, if you like. I call it a boat, but it's really a ship. And it's a small ship, a boat, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, she gets this dynamite, does a big bang. Harrison Ford gets out of there with her, and they speed along in this speedboat and get away, and then they're heading for like the tomb. So they're heading for some sort of tomb with skeletons in it, and they have to, you know, get the other part of the dial, basically. And this is where the dial's hidden. So I like the bit of the tomb. It's very caricature of Indiana Jones, very, you know, what you would expect. And Indiana Jones, by the way, I have to tell you, he's got his hat still and his whip and things like that. There was one part in the movie earlier on in the beginning where he's literally kicking butt with his whip and he's whipping all the Hitler people away, you know, when he's the younger version of him. So that's very interesting, and it's good he's still got his props, if you like. And so anyway, coming back to the present day, they have this tomb and they realize there's a skeleton down there, but before they get to the skeleton, where they find the second part of the dial, they go through these like tunnel things, like caves, if you like, because it's like a tomb, and they go through these caves, really narrow caves, and they've got bugs that are coming down all over them. So if I had to say some things that let the movie down, which wasn't much, it was this part where they could have done a lot more shocking surprises. They could have booby trapped the tomb a lot more. So rather than just having a rock face to get up and having a hard climb, and Indiana Jones is old now, so it's harder for him, and then going in small like cave things and having bugs, there wasn't probably enough bugs all over them for me. There was a little bit, there was like bugs everywhere, but there wasn't really that many over them. But there was nothing else. There was no flames coming out of anywhere. There was no boulders shooting down about to smash their face in. There was no axes about to come down on them. They could have done something better in that tomb where it would have made it a lot more action adventure in the tomb, if you know what I mean. It would have made it a lot more tense, but they didn't. And so I think that was a little bit of a spoiler of the film. You know, I thought they could have improved on that, to be honest. And I thought if they'd have done that, it would have made the movie so much better, because it would have just been even more classic Indiana Jones, and it would have been more action and more power and more adventure. And that little bit was a letdown. You know, that's the only thing really I'd criticise about the movie, is there wasn't enough action in that part. There wasn't enough surprises. There wasn't many, well, there wasn't really any booby traps. It was just some bugs, but there wasn't that many on them. There was a few like scorpions and big millipedes or something that he shook off, but it wasn't that much. It wasn't like they were crawling all over their bodies and stuff. So, you know, if I think back to the previous Indiana Jones movies that I have seen, or parts I've seen, it was a lot more terrifying in that way. You know, it's like things closing in on them, bugs like all over them, really hard to get through them, and boulders coming and all this type of stuff. So they could have done better on that bit. And I wish they had. That was the only thing that bugged me. Joke, get it? Bugged me. Anyway, they could have done better on that bit. So they get the other half of the dial, but then the baddies come in. Oh, by the way, they've kidnapped Teddy in part of the way, and so anyway, they end up taking the dial. The baddies do, the physician does, with his crew, and he has taken the dial and he's joined them together with a watch. And not long after that, I think it's not long after that, they shoot Harrison. Let's say shoot Indiana Jones. And what happens is Indiana Jones ends up going with them. He gets forced to go on a plane with them. And during this plane trip, the bad guy is taking both half of the dials, putting it together with a watch in the middle to change time. Meanwhile, it's some crazy action movie stuff going on. So meanwhile, Helena, who's now on a motorbike, who's actually interjected and saved Teddy. So Teddy's on the back of the motorbike with her. She's asked Teddy to start a plane. Can he start a plane? So he started this plane up. Partway through the plane journey, this guy who actually owns the plane wakes up. He's been in the sleep in the back. But Helena has since gone on a motorbike and gone on the plane with Indiana Jones, where the physician and his bad crew, he's bad in the bad crew because they used to follow Hitler, but he's like the leader of his own crew now. They've stolen the dial off him and Helena, and they've got the whole thing together, and they're about to change history because they're going to go back in time. He thinks he's going to go back in time to when he would win the war, and he would go back into a certain time and he would triumph and he would win the war and much more, and things wouldn't have turned out the way they did. So he's very much a power-driven guy. Meanwhile, Harrison Ford is bleeding. He's been shot. But I thought that was a little bit lame. It's like he bleeds throughout ages of the film when he's on the plane. It's like, why aren't you dead by now? You know what I mean? If anyone else got shot in the chest there, which is near the heart, I think people would be bleeding to death. But it's like really slow blood coming out. You know what I mean? They're not patching it up for him. They're not helping him. He's got nothing, that he hasn't taken any clothes off to tie around his chest to keep it tight or to prevent it bleeding anymore. It's just a bullet's gone through his like jacket and shirt, and he's bleeding, and blood is seeping through, and they don't give a toss about him. They've been pushing him shoved him in the plane. So Helena managed to get on the plane just before it left by driving this motorbike, got on the plane as like a stowaway, and went through this section to get to Indiana Jones. And then Teddy, who's meant to be like a kid, he looks like he's 15. I looked that actor up that plays him, and the actor's actually 16 in real life, but he looks about 15 in the movie, so got it nearly right. He is following the plane. He's not really driven a plane before. This guy wakes up as a pilot. So you've got Teddy and the pilot behind, and then you've got Helena that's on the plane with Indiana Jones. So Indiana Jones is bleeding, and they don't care. They're kind of slapping him around a bit, and Indiana Jones is saying, you know, you're doing it wrong. You've got the coordinates wrong. You're going to change time, but you're going back to a time that's not the right time. And he tries to tell the guy, but the guy's like, the physician's like adamant and just keeps going on this course. When he's turning the dial, putting the watch in, and this is opening up the heavens, if you like, to let their plane go through, and actually pulls Teddy's in as well to go to this other time zone, this other station time. But he does end up going back in time, and Indiana Jones is on the plane and Helena with him and his crew. But Helena tries to get rid of a lot of the crew by unexpectedly turning up out the blue in the cargo section, or similar type of place, and helps her goddad, if you like, godfather. And some of them end up um being put through like an escape hatch and tossed out in midair. So she ends up being there with Indiana Jones, and the guy literally twists the dials. Indiana Jones is like, "You're going off course, you're going off course." He's like, "No, no, it's fine." And then Indiana Jones is like, "You need to like stop it." And so the physician's like, "Oh no, let's abort, let's turn around." And before you know it, he's gone into this other time zone and been pulled in there. And what you find is he's gone back to a war, but it isn't the war he wanted to go back to. He basically wanted to win the war himself in the past. And instead he ended up with Romans in the Roman times. Romans were fighting someone, I presume it's the Vikings, but it was a Roman time. So towards the end of the movie, you get to see all these action sequences with spears and stuff like this, where they're in Roman times now, and the Romans are fighting each other. And this is a wrong war. He didn't want to go back to this time. And in the end, Indiana Jones gets off the plane with Helena with a parachute. The plane has been speared a lot from the Romans that think it's an eagle or dragon. No, a dragon. Yeah, let's get their dragons. And so they're spearing it down. The plane crashes. The evil physician dies with the other ones. But then Indiana Jones is stranded now with Helena unless they go back quickly in the plane that Teddy's got with the pilot and go through like this door opening in the universe to get back quickly. And Indiana Jones meets Achilles, who I think the dial originally belongs to, who made the dial, as far as I understand. And then Indiana Jones wants to stay there, and he said to Helena, "Look, you just let me be here." And Helena's like, "No, you should be coming back to the present, not staying here." And he's like, "No, just leave me here. I want to be here." And you honestly think he's going to stay there, because what's happened in the current old man present day situation is that you find out that his wife wants a divorce, but he hasn't signed the divorce papers yet. And it's because they lost their son, and she was grieving. They were both upset, but he didn't know how to comfort her. So it created a huge wedge between them. And so they're separated pending divorce. And Helene is like saying, "You need to come." And she basically doesn't think he has anything to live for in the present day. So he'd rather stay with Achilles and the Romans. And, he's bleeding still to death, basically. And Helene's like, "No, come with me." And you honestly think it's not going to happen. Anyway, she punches him in the face, knocks him out so she can put him with her on the plane with Teddy and the pilot. And he wakes up back in present day, and he's got the dial next to him, because throughout the movie, the majority of the time, she's been trying to steal the dial, and he was trying to get it as well. So it was a battle between Indiana Jones and Helena, his own goddaughter, trying to get this dial. She wanted it for money, and he wanted it to stop people doing evil things with it. And so in the end, Helena decides to save him, and instead of being driven by cash and money, she genuinely cares about her godfather, Indiana Jones. So she got him back. He's in bed. He's got bandages all over his chest. So he's recovering from the bullet wound. The dial is by him, so she's allowed him to have the dial. She's not taking it away from him for money anymore, because she realizes what's important in life is a godfather and the new family she's got, which is Teddy. She's brought with her, and so she's got herself, and then Teddy's like her kid or little brother, and she's got her godfather, even though she's not got a father anymore. And Indiana Jones has got a friend who's got kids as well, so they're like all one big family together. And Helena got in touch with Indiana Jones' wife, who apparently is from the first movie. My friend said, because I watched it with my friend, the movie. and my best friend, and he said that my best friend Andy, and he said that she was his original wife from the very first movie. So they brought her back. She's a lot older now, and Helena brought them back. Helena leaves with Teddy and Indiana Jones' friend and their kids, and they all leave together and they talk, and he's saying about they talking about hurt and pain basically, and he's saying, look, I hurt all over, and she's like, oh, I hurt too, and he's like, is there anywhere that doesn't hurt? And she's like, yeah, on my elbow. So he goes and kisses her elbow, and he's like, anywhere else? And she goes like, here, and he kisses her on her shoulder. And then you see them tenderly kissing a couple of times. So it's like old-fashioned romance and kissing at the end. But whenever it's an older couple, it's not really passionate. It's more like mwah, like this. You know what I mean? I love to see old couples actually snog. It's like, why aren't you still snogging as an older couple? Come on. Like, romance and passion doesn't die just because you get to a certain age. It can be a lot more fun, actually. But that's coming from a hyper romantic hyper kisser. But yeah, I did like that. It was lovely, tender moments. So I thought it was beautiful. They got them both back together basically in the end. And she was taking care of him. She was buying him groceries to fill the fridge because there wasn't any. His washing is hung on pegged on the line. So basically, in the end, they've got back together. And Helena is no longer after money. She's like a reformed character in that way, who genuinely cares about her godfather and the new life she's made with him. So like one big happy family at the end. So I really liked the movie. There's loads of elements in it. You know, there's the car chasers, jumping on the, like going on top of trains, almost hurting yourself. At one point, Harrison Ford is going down a subway on a horse. So they had a lot of stuff going on, car chasers, motorbike chasers, like these little mini cab type buggy chasers, horse chase, to get away from people. And there was just so much going on, tons of action, great storyline. Harrison Ford looked fantastic for his age, really amazing as a young version, did incredibly well acting as the older version of him, the older version of Indiana Jones, and he was just amazing. The whole film kicked ass, and I would highly recommend you go to see it. I think the film was fantastic. It had all the elements in there really of Indiana Jones. Like I said, they could have had more in the tomb part, but overall it had the elements that you could expect from it, and it's really, really good. I think it did a really good job. And I'm so glad that they made this movie, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I love that title. And I love the fact that she did bring him back to the present day, because she said I had to, otherwise history would have changed anyway. You don't want that. So it was just great. A lovely movie. Thoroughly enjoyed it. My best friend Andy really loved it as well. Had all the Indiana Jones elements, like he said, in it that you would expect. I thought it was a very high quality movie, because when a film's been like franchised or whatever, or in this case, like repeatedly made lots of film episodes of, you get to thinking, is this going to be as good as the other ones? It's going to be any better? But I thought it was just as good as the other ones, if not better in some ways. So I highly recommend it. I loved it. Please go and watch it. It's on the cinema now, especially in the UK, because I live in the UK, and it's fantastic. But even if you're watching this on replay some other time, please go and watch it. Rent it when it comes out, rental. When it's available, just go and watch it. It's a beautiful movie. I love the cinema experience. I love going to see movies at the cinema. My best friend Andy actually paid for my ticket, so I got to be in a recliner seat, which is good. And yeah, I really loved it. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this movie review. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. This is Asexual Perspectives book. Don't forget to grab a copy on Amazon. And also, if you like superhero movies, get my autobiographical fibromyalgia self-help handbook. It's basically a personal development book in disguise. So go and grab that now. And I'm going to love you and leave you for now. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thanks for being here. Don't forget, please give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already. Share it if you know someone who's enthusiastic about movies, especially action adventure movies, which Indiana Jones is. and subscribe and hit that bell icon so you never miss an episode from me. Make sure you never miss a live stream ever again. Lots of love. Take care. Great to see you, and I'll see you soon next video live stream. Bye. Take care. Always stay ace.